Hi there, it's Fran Davidson from psychicandenergywork.com.au, and this is part one of my monthly observations for October 2025. The monthly observations, or part one, always looks back at the month that just was, which of course in this sense is September 2025. And September brought us 8 4s. Now, 8 of any number other than 2 or 1 is not very common. Because of that, so that when the tally increases 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, as the tally gets larger, so too tends to be the obviousness with which the dynamics that 4 represents play out. I hope I said that in the right way. So what do I mean by that? Wouldn't be surprised, therefore, if you had to work through or just put up with, witness, it could be any of the above, probably all of them, a whole lot of 4 themes in September. Now, 4 can mean support. 4 can mean build. Are you building well enough, wisely? What's your foundation like? What are your approaches like, your methodologies, your assumptions, your plans, the research that you've done even? So 4 periods can highlight any of these things. And that's really interesting at a time when, instant information is always on hand, and so too is the old push the button and there it goes. In other words, immediacy. This is a world, after all, that has learned over the last few decades to jump to conclusions, to be very confident about its opinion in a way that it can act quite finitely, quite anchored into its opinion, not because opinion in itself is a negative or a bad dynamic, but you see, opinion is there to guide us, not fence us in. And that's a very, very fine line, because often when we become too entrenched in our views, in our patterns, in our todays, and hello, we all do that, it's called routines. But whenever we do, life can start to get stuck. It can start to manifest as less than perfect or less than good, as we intuitively gut feel know that can be. In other words, you know what? It's not quite right, whether that's on a really loud level or whether that's just on a subtle level. One of the things I noticed about last month was how 4 very much can teach us stuff about support. Now, when we first use that word, our focus can be drawn into what are the supports around me. And of course, that's part of the deal. But it's also, what are the supports I offer? Now, that as a question, as an inquiry, can encourage us to look at how are we supporting others. But it can also ask us to review whether we should be supporting others, not because we shouldn't do that as a general principle, but in the way that we have been. So 4, therefore, and not only as a result of this, can very much be a time when we are encouraged to audit the assumptions, the expectations, even the values that we've been running with, not necessarily because they're wrong or bad in themselves, but are we over-relying on them? Have we put them in place without really understanding what they're bringing to the table, or even leaving off it? Another part of 4, therefore, can be the lesson of, you know what, you don't need anybody's support, you just need your own. Now, that's a very big statement. Hello, we all rely on one another, even if we don't want to. Life is, after all, a chain. Manifestation is a chain. Creation, production is a chain. And therefore it involves, of course, the ability to rely on all of the other inputs and outputs that everybody else is generating as well. However, 4 periods again can ask us to examine these things, to even research them. They can, because 4 also speaks of awareness, therefore moments of greater awareness, flashbacks, or even insights coming to the fore in a way that, you know what, now I understand. I understand in a way that therefore I can move forward and build really great quality, not necessarily because what I was running with yesterday was dodgy or needs to be rejected now, but 4 is very much the fine-tuning moment. It's tighten that bolt. It's, you know what, that piece of wood probably needs replacing. Yeah, and therefore 4 can be a time to overhaul, whether that's on a very minute level or whether that's in totality. Within that, therefore, because September brought 8 fours, I wouldn't be surprised if you said to me, you know what, in September, I really saw very, very clearly how I wasn't supporting myself enough, how others weren't actually supporting me in the way that I need them to. Yeah, or more important, in the way that integrity needs them to. Yeah, for all of our sakes. And to the degree that that happened, congratulations, you're on track, you're doing well, and just keep going. Because in one sense, the overhaul, the tsunami, the levelling of the foundations only occurs to give us the chance to build even better. And therefore, within that, achieve even better, manifest even better. And better doesn't necessarily mean more. It doesn't necessarily mean shinier. It just means, hello, more spiritually true, more of that the soul really needs, and therefore genuine happiness, fulfillment, satisfaction really needs. Because at the end of the day, spirituality is about arriving at the right end place. And that's not always a picture or how do I say it? It's not always an outcome where the focus is dominated by the physicality of what we're in. The rightness, the goodness of something comes from the feel of it. And that's why for each of us, we can like different things. We can resonate with different degrees of clothing or fashion or food or even settings. So a 4 period can shift in ways, shift us, shift people around us, shift our awareness, our perceptions, our understandings. It can play with all of these things so as to help us realize, you know what, for me to build well, not necessarily you, but for me, I need to do this with my models. I have to do that with my frameworks, with my approaches. I have to have this closer and that further away, not because I'm taking stances that are about rejecting in a negative or exclusive or a dismissive, downgrading way others, yeah, but because I understand that the landscape is big enough for all of us. We don't have to all sit in the same room and agree with one another. And the more we understand that, the more we can let one another go with respect, with love, in a way that we let each other slip to the neighbourhood that we really each belong in, and at a distance where we can actually wave to each other, welcome one another, love one another, respect and encourage one another, because we're not sitting too close with our differences. So within this, therefore, is always, within any step, there is always that chance to breathe, let go, release and allow flow. And at the end of the day, one of the things that prevents us from doing that on a constant and holistic level is mind. Just excuse the background. Within that, therefore, the chance to breathe in through nose, out through mouth in a way that is a full breath. It's a cyclic breath. And what I mean by that is as you breathe in, let it go down to the very bottom and underneath your feet, and then let it come back up again as you breathe out. Let it include the whole circle and the whole circuit of you, the front, the back, the sides, the middles. Yeah? You don't need to visualize that. You just need to let it happen. As you breathe in, allow life to be a flow that you receive and accept and allow, even just witness, rather than direct all out of here and visualizing and wanting and willing and influencing even. Because the more you do this, the more you create room for divine energies, universal energies, to drop in, to push things out for you, with you, and because of you. In other words, inclusive of you, but also in a way that isn't requiring judgment. Because at the end of the day, opinion can stop flow. Opinion can limit flow. And the more we know that, the more we can do our release work, our rebalancing work, our breath work, which is all one and the same, thank you. The more we can do that in a way that I just let go of all mind. I let go of all opinion, not because I nullify everything that I've just thought and learned and discovered, but because by letting it go, just for a second, I create the zone where intuition can really kick in. where the divine or the universe, whatever you call it, can really flow on in as an intelligence, however I receive it and however it wants to come, in a way that helps to verify, confirm, explain, add value, affirm, and point the way forward for the next spiritual, physical, practical best. So all the very best to you for October. I hope these words have helped you process September a little better, get into your breath work at all times, especially this year. And if you need a hand, give me a call, psychicandenergywork.com.au to the contacts page. You'll find my details there. Feel free now to go through to part 2 for this month's monthly observations, where I'll be talking about October as a birth zone and a what zone, and therefore how the life is likely to help us get stronger on what we're witnessing, how we're contributing, and what it wants us to be offering next best. Take good care. See you soon.